Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Something Better podcast. If this is your first time joining us, I'll just let you know a little bit about what we do. We like to have conversations with people from all walks of life and talk about what it means to have real purpose, meaning, and peace, truly something better in your life. We love our listeners. We want to learn more about you. So if you enjoy listening to this episode, you could share your feedback with us by going to somethingbetter.us/podcast. You'll find it at the bottom of the page. We would love to hear from you. Well, we have got a great show for you today. I am super excited to introduce our guest today, Randy Valentine. Randy is a husband, father, chief marketing officer, and soon to be a self-published author of a book called Identity Driven Purpose. And it's all about finding your true identity and purpose in your life. So welcome to the show, Randy.
Oh, well, thank you, Michelle. It's an honor to be here.
Well, we are really glad to have you. Why don't you go ahead and just share a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, I guess what I spend most of my time on and with is my family. So, like you said, I'm a husband to my wife Christy and my two boys Nathan and Zachary, and really that's where the bulk of my time goes, is spending time with them. And but aside from that, like you mentioned, I'm a chief marketing officer at an organization here based in Texas, and it's been an interesting journey that in and of itself getting to this place. It's really been God's blessing to allow me to be a part of this organization, what we do. And it's also been an interesting journey. I know we'll go into this, but moving from a for-profit to a nonprofit environment and work has been pretty interesting too. And so maybe we'll be able to hit on that a little bit in this interview.
Well, Randy, we're excited to have you here. And let's go ahead and get started and hear a little bit more of your story. So I'd like to just back up a little bit. And I know briefly from chatting with you a little bit, you've just overcome many trials and some definitely challenging circumstances. And then you've also accomplished many goals, both personally and professionally, which have really led you to write this upcoming book and help to discover your true purpose and identity in life. And so can you just take us back and give us a little glimpse into your background? Set the stage for us about how some of those challenges you faced early on have really led you to where you are today.
Sure, absolutely, be happy to. Well, it's interesting, kind of part of my path. I've been in different parts of the country, but I grew up in the South, grew up just outside Atlanta in a little town called Dunwoody, and moved there when I was about 3 years old, and moved out when I was 18. So that was really my upbringing. I was down in the Atlanta area, and kind of growing up in the Bible Belt was an interesting thing as well. When I was younger, 5, 6, 7 years old, we went to church a little bit, but never was really part of our life. We kind of felt like, looking back, I felt like we kind of did it out of duty more than anything else. And so when I got a little bit older, I was in fourth grade, my parents divorced. And at that point, we pretty much stopped going to church altogether. But back in that time when we would go to church, again, like I said, I felt like it was more out of duty than anything else. And I never had conversations about God with my parents. I never talked about the Holy Spirit, never talked about Jesus, none of that stuff. So I really consider myself growing up in a non-Christian home. And so, going through elementary school, going through high school with my parents divorced, I'd spend weekends with my dad until I believe it was in 10th grade. He actually ended up moving away to a different city. So I didn't have a great close relationship with my dad. I mean, he provided for us. We lived in a middle class area. So, I mean, never missed a meal. Always had clothes on my back, that kind of thing. And, on paper, you're thinking, wow, that's a pretty good upbringing. But not having that close relationship with my dad, I realized later in life was really something that I was missing. And that kind of led me not having that mentor, not having that a male authority figure speaking into my life. I went into late elementary school and high school, making decisions on my own and just figuring, I've got to figure this out on my own. And of course, as you can imagine, as a 12, 14, 16-year-old, there are a few mistakes that I made along the way. And so, not having that guide again was really challenging. And I think, like you mentioned about this book that I wrote, I did reflect back on this time to really say, what happened there? What was I missing? And then what did that kind of feel like, if you will? It's really weird sometimes as a guy to go through and think, okay, well, how did I feel as a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old? When in many ways I was kind of checked out emotionally. But looking back, there was a lot of fear. I made decisions really based on fear, but then also on what I would call people pleasing. And I wanted people to like me. I wanted, to be accepted by everybody. And that really, I believe, came from the fact that I didn't have someone in my life speaking into my life saying, hey, Randy, you're good as you are. You're okay. You're going to get through this. And so there was that performance, fear-based, people pleasing thing that really drove a lot of my decisions in high school. And really at the end of the day, that also kind of made me feel, not good enough. It was when I get done with this book, I can, people can go deeper into my story, but there was this one part of my upbringing which was really interesting, and it kind of set the stage for a lot of things and how I looked at life at the time. And that was making mistakes. Every time I made a mistake, it was difficult in my home because that mistake was looked upon negatively. And so I tell this one story in this book that I'm writing that I was riding my big wheel one day. I was 5 years old and crashed. I came down our driveway. I crashed into our garbage cans, and it made this really loud noise and scared me to death. And I got a little banged up, but I mean, I was scared because of the noise. And so I came running inside, and looking for someone to kind of, hey, what happened? You okay? And the first thing out of my dad's mouth was, "What'd you do that for?" And so I had this upbringing where it's like, don't make a mistake, do everything right, and perform. And so that really, again, that with fear and everything else kind of guided these decisions going on my own into adulthood.
Sure. Yeah, Randy, I think a lot of people can relate to this part of your story, just the performance-based mentality and making mistakes. We all make mistakes, right? No one's perfect. So like you're saying, this is early on in your life, and it allowed you to make some fear-based decisions. Then walk us through, how did you start to navigate that as a young adult and going off to college?
Great question. Once I got to the end of high school, because of some of the decisions that I had made and some of the people that I was hanging around with, I realized I needed to make a change. I was heading down the wrong path, doing things I shouldn't have been doing. Again, not having someone speak into my life. And I mentioned earlier that my father had moved out of town. Well, he was living in California, had moved out there for work. And he offered to help pay for college if I came out to live with him. And I thought that, that sounded like a great deal, even though I didn't have, a strong relationship with him. I was like, hey, maybe this is an opportunity to, to heal that relationship, plus get away from this path that I was on, in high school. So I did, ended up packing up, moved out of my mom's house, moved in with my dad at 18, and started going to college, junior college at the time, was working full time. And still that change didn't really make the difference. It kind of helped because it kind of got me away from a group that I shouldn't have been hanging out with. But funny thing is, I moved to California, started finding those same people, started hanging out with those same people. But what changed was, and again, looking back and reflecting on this, I believe God had a plan in all of this, because as I was hanging out with some of these folks that I probably shouldn't have been hanging out with, this new group of friends in California, I was introduced to this girl named Christy, who's now my wife. And so we became friends, started dating. I was introduced to her parents, of course, and her parents were strong believers, followers of Jesus. And they spoke things into my life that I had never heard of, had never thought of, but I knew that I needed it. And that was something that they were speaking into my life. I was like, I need this. And so I started going to church. Didn't really know what church was about. And so I'd go, living with my parents or with my dad and my stepmom. And I'd get up on Sunday morning and they'd be doing their thing. And I'd leave the house with them and I'd go meet my soon to be in-laws and my girlfriend at church. And the pastor would start saying things that I was like, I need this God thing, there's something there that I need. And so I started reading the Bible a little bit, and it was interesting. A lot of people have these kind of conversion experiences or whatever you want to call it when they, find the Lord or the Lord finds them. And it's this amazing moment and everything in their life changed. Well, it wasn't really like that for me. It was interesting. I was driving to church on a Sunday morning. I'll never forget this. I was driving to church on a Sunday morning, and it was in this town called Los Gatos, California, and driving across the freeway. And I had this really strong sense that I just need to say yes to Jesus and just accept him into my heart. And so that's what I did. I didn't really know the scriptures at all, but I knew I needed God in my life. So I literally just prayed a prayer on my way to church. Jesus, I don't know really who you are. God, I don't know who you are, but I know I need you. And so I accept you into my heart. And that was really the beginning of an ongoing story that's still unfolding before me, where God was just truly fathering me and guiding me from that moment on. And obviously he was in my life before that. But at that moment, I feel like then he had opportunity to really kind of make, some differences in my life.
So it sounds like you were really searching for meaning from a young age, just direction, kind of lacking that mentorship that you didn't have in your father. And you're navigating this yourself. And it was really through a relationship with now your wife that really kind of led you to find some of that direction in God.
That's exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because obviously I was, meeting my girlfriend's parents because I was in love with my girlfriend at the time. And so, you do, anything to impress them. So sure, I'll go hang out with your parents or whatever. But again, I believe God knew that. And so by spending time with them, they would just start speaking things into my life. And like you said, it was doing something in my heart. It was doing something in my mind. It was doing something in my soul. I was like, wow, I need this. And here's the other thing too, just be honest with you, my in-laws, Christy's parents, they loved me in a way that I hadn't been loved before. And they accepted me in a way that I hadn't been accepted before. So you're right. That relational piece with people led me to realize I need more of that. And that's what God wants to give us.
So you're at this point in your life, you're kind of turning the corner and beginning this relationship with God, not knowing what lies ahead. And tell us what happens next in your journey.
Sure. Yeah, this was really kind of a turning point in my life. So if we both finish college, we get married right after we finish college. We both start working. We're in Silicon Valley out there in California, both working, professionally, focused really on work. And we were going to church. We had a great church home, and we were involved in doing that. But still, really, almost I would call it kind of just doing the church thing, just showing up and sort of checking the box. And there was, I really started enjoying the worship, and I started learning more. But it wasn't until 5 years into our marriage, I never forget the day. And my wife was not feeling good. She was, kind of looked like what she had was, we thought was strep throat. She was feeling weak, taking naps, which she never did. She's a pretty high energy person. And we were supposed to go on this 2-week vacation, and we were supposed to, hop on an airplane on a Monday morning. Well, on Friday, the Friday before that, we figured, hey, let's just go get you checked out. Looks like maybe you have strep throat. Let's get you some penicillin or something. We'll be on our way. So we go to the doctor, and for some reason, he gets this sense. And as it turns out later, he was a follower of Christ. He believed in God. He just had this sense, I need to take a blood test. So anyways, he takes a blood test and, sends us on our way. We get a phone call later that afternoon saying, hey, I got the blood test results back. Stay put this weekend, watch happy movies, and I've got an appointment with an oncologist with you on Monday morning. And I didn't even know what an oncologist was. And so she hangs up the phone. She says, my doctor said I need to go see an oncologist. Like, isn't it like a cancer doctor? And so we're like, all right, this guy's wacky. What's going on? So we went to the emergency room on this Friday night just to get this like second opinion, if you want to call it. Well, same thing. They took a blood test. They came back. They said your white blood cell counts are absolutely out of control. It looks like you have a form of leukemia. You need to go see that doctor on Monday morning. So forget getting on a plane on Monday. We instead went into the doctor's office, and that was the beginning of a month in the hospital for my wife, February 1st through March 1st, 2000. And it was during that time in the hospital where things just absolutely changed in my life in a dramatic way. So kind of fast forward 18 days into the hospital. I am, I've spent the first few nights with her in the hospital. She's hooked up to all these different, tubes and things, and they've got these ports in her body, and they're putting all this poison into her body because she's got what's called acute myelogenous leukemia, really rare form of leukemia to get it for a 29-year-old. And I never forget the moment. I'm standing there by her bed, and for the first time in my life, I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do in this situation. Looking back at my teenage years, I always had to try to figure stuff out, and I could figure it out. And I just go on the path, and I can figure it out, do this, do that, whatever. Here I am. Here's my wife. She's literally on the bed. I think she's dying, and she only had a 14% chance of survival at the time. And I realized there's nothing I can do. And so it was at that moment, really just on my knees in prayer, crying out to God, saying, God, I need your help. I don't know what to do. And it wasn't an audible voice, but I sensed God basically saying, Randy, you're right. There isn't anything you can do, but I've got this. And so through the Lord kind of speaking to me, and through Christy's brother coming and speaking I'll never forget, there was a time he came into the hospital as well, and he said, hey, how are you guys praying? And we're like, well, of course we're praying for Christy to be healed. And he's like, no, let's read scriptures. Let's talk about the fact that God is going to heal her. And just little interactions with people, again, these relationships with people just changed the way I see the Lord, changed the way that I see how he works. And again, it was a difficult time, but it was also a freeing time to realize I can't do it, but you know what? God can.
So Randy, we have a lot of listeners that also have family members going through cancer or other challenges, or they've grown up without a father and can definitely relate to your story. And so, they may be listening and really wanting to find this true peace that you've kind of shared with us, you've discovered through your journey and through what you've gone through the relationship with your wife and her family and being introduced to God. So if someone is really searching, how would you tell them to kind of begin to discover more about God and find this peace?
That's a great question. It's relatively simple, but it's actually pretty profound as well. For me, again, going back to just knowing that I needed something else in my life, going back to when I was a teenager and, saying yes to Jesus in that car. There was just something deep down that I knew I was missing. And I just be honest with you, I'm not the most I wouldn't what you call a thinker. So, but I just sensed it. I felt it. I just knew I was missing something. And so that was really I'd say part of a beginning place. And so, for people who are struggling maybe with a spouse with cancer or, even raising kids, there's another story I could share with you around that. But, the challenges with raising children, it's not easy. One of the most difficult things I've ever done is raising my two boys. I wouldn't trade it for anything. The satisfaction and the joy and the love that I have there, it's incredible. But I need the Lord to help me in that because I can't do it on my own. And when I go and seek the Lord, and literally for me, it's just, this is what I do. I stop. I get into a quiet place. I'll either sit down or lay down or just, get on my knees. And then I picture what I think, what heaven looks like. And there's, places in Revelation in particular that talk about heaven and what heaven looks like. And so I just have this picture in my head. It's probably wrong, but it works for me. So I have this picture of Jesus and God and just what's going on in heaven. And I picture that and I just stop and I just look at that in my mind just for a few minutes. And then I just start to talk. And I just say, God, thank you for allowing me to talk to you. Jesus, thank you for what you did for me and dying for me. He talks in John 3:16. And so it's literally just stopping and just taking that moment. I feel like sometimes we're so busy that just taking, I'm only talking maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and just stopping and just, some people want to call it meditating, whatever you want to call it, but just stopping and then talking to the Lord. And then this peace, every single time, this peace will come over me. And then I'm just at this point of thankfulness, and many times even in tears. Wow, thank you, Lord. You're real. You're here. You hear me. Thank you. And from there, I can just have this conversation and just bring, needs or desires or problems or whatever to him. And again, that peace just flows over me.
That's great. Yeah, we, like you shared, we all have made mistakes and have struggles and problems we're going through. And so if you're listening today and that's you and you're just really searching for hope, you can visit our website, somethingbetter.us. And there's a ton of resources that just share about who God is, how you could learn more about him. And we even have some online volunteers that would be happy to begin an online discussion with you and answer any questions you have. So Randy, just to wrap up, one thing we like to do is ask each of our guests if there's one maybe verse in the Bible or passage that has really played a significant role in your life. What would that be for you?
Absolutely. It's probably one of the most known passages in the Bible, and it's like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, John 3:16, and it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." For me, there is so much in that one passage. And once I became a dad with my two boys, I really realized what it meant that he gave up his only son. So I would envision, what would it be like if you had only one child, only one son, one daughter, whatever, and you gave them up? You literally allowed them to die for all these other people. And it wrecked my world. And so I go back to that passage to see, wow, God, you are a good father. And the pain that you must have endured to give up your son because you love me, because you love the people listening, what you would do and what you endured and that loss, is incredible. But then he goes on and he says that you won't perish and you'll have everlasting life. It's like God knew he's going to give up his son, and Jesus had to walk this earth and go through a terrible, torturous death and all other stuff. But you know what? He was reunited with his Father in heaven, and he is, and we will be too. And so that's the hope of the future that God gives me is, yeah, I got this stuff here on earth and, still struggle with stuff at times, and God is with me and walking with me, but then I get eternity with him. And that's the thing that just I hang on to from a hope perspective. So John 3:16, there's so much more there, but that's, I would say one of my most, I love that scripture. I go back to that often.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you've never read the Bible, you can also go to somethingbetter.us, and we have an online Bible and lots of tools you can find under the resource section. But, well, thanks again, Randy, for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing your story, and we're excited to read your book once it comes out. We know it's not out yet, but once it is in the future, hopefully we can link to it. And real quick, lastly, where can people find you online?
That's a great question. I actually have, for the name of the book is Identity Driven Purpose. I do have a website, but it's not very pretty right now. I need to do a new one. But other than that, I don't really have any other places online yet, but that will be coming hopefully in the next couple of months. I will have everything around that completed, and then people can search that more. But if you look for Identity Driven Purpose, you'll see some information out there about that.
Awesome. We'll be sure to link it up once it's ready. But thanks again. Appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you, April. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you taking the time. This was awesome.
Jesus truly is something better, the answer to our search for meaning and identity. He can bring real purpose and joy to your life. We'd love to help you get to know him. So connect with us online at somethingbetter.us/podcast. And if you're ready to begin a relationship with Him today, just click the Learn More button. On our site, you'll also find previous episodes, and you can share your feedback with us in a voice message. We release a new episode every 2 weeks, so be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Did you enjoy today's episode? Do us a favor and take a screenshot of the episode on your phone and tag us on Instagram at Find Something Better. We'd love your help sharing this great content with others. Thanks for joining us on the Something Better podcast today. See you next time.